Okay. Okay, dear participants, actually the session which was to be taken up by Dr. K.D. Yadav sir, actually he is unwell, he is suffering from fever, and so he is unable to take up the session. But we are fortunate enough that Dr. NAMRATA JARIWALA has consented to take up the session on a very short notice, and she would be taking the same session with the same slides. Okay, so let me first introduce Madam Dr. Namrata Jariwala. Ma'am is working as an associate professor at Civil Engineering Department of SVNIT, Surat. Ma'am was a gold medalist during her bachelor as well as masters in civil engineering from MS University, Baroda. With over 25 years of academic experience, Ma'am has published over 40 research papers in reputed journals and have written 8 book chapters. 6 students have been awarded the degree of PhD under her guideship. Ma'am is a coordinator of Environmental Audit Cell at SVNIT, Schedule 1 auditor recognized by GPCB. I extend my heartfelt thanks to you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation on a very short notice and consenting for presenting an expert talk. I would request you now, ma'am, to take over from here.
Okay. Thank you very much for my introduction.
Are you able to share the slides?
Yes, sir, 1 minute. Just I'm trying.
Okay. Okay.
Is it visible?
No, ma'am. Actually, you need to click on the share button besides the
That
leave.
I have done. I have done.
Yes, and share the screen. Don't share the window. Please
Okay,
share
okay,
the screen.
okay. So
Is it working, ma'am?
yes, 1 minute. Actually, entire screen. I think it is not possible for me. Ac- Hello, sir.
Ma'am. I'm
हाँ हाँ
I'm listening.
Actually, entire screen પર પેલું ક્લિક નથી થતું. આવતું નથી એ. ત્યાં ક્લિક થવાતું નથી.
Mm,
એક જ મિનિટ
okay.
ફરી હું try કરી.
Do one thing. તમે મને
એક
તમારી સ્લાઇડ્સ મોકલી શકશો હમણાં?
હા, એક જ મિનિટ હું આ એક લાસ્ટ ટ્રાય કરી જોઉં.
સ્ક્રીન અને વિન્ડો બે ઓપ્શન આવશે. એમાં સ્ક્રીન
હા,
ઉપર ડબલ ક્લિક કરવાનું રહેશે
સ્ક્રીન
તમારે.
પર ડબલ ક્લિક કરે છે ને શેર નથી આવતું ત્યાં. શેર મોડ નથી આવતું. ઓકે, આવી ગયું. ચાલો, વાંધો most probably. I think it is visible now.
નો મેમ,
Still not.
નથી વિઝિબલ નથી.
ઓકે 1 મિનિટ લાસ્ટ વોટ્સઅપ કરી દઉં છું તમને.
હા, ઓકે. Participants, we are sorry for the delay. Kindly cope with us for another 1 or 2 minutes.
No problem, sir.
Thank you for your patience. મેમ તમે વોટ્સઅપ કરો છો કે મેલ કરો છો? નમ્રતા મેમ.
ના એવું હવે છે ઓનલી હા બસ હવે આવ્યું છે ને આવી ગયો છે આવી ગયો શેરમાં સ્ક્રીન શેરિંગ માં જવું પડશે શેર
હવે ટ્રાય કરી જો મેમ. હલો. Yes, ma'am. It's visible, perfectly visible. Please unmute yourself, ma'am.
Okay. Now is it okay?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes, it is visible. You can start the presentation mode.
Okay. So actually, sorry for the interruptions and good evening to all. So my topic is related to the solid and hazardous waste, and actually this is the most important component, but at the same time if you just see, it is the neglected component as far as the industry and the as far as the urban authority is concerned. So I'm not wasting the time, but when we are considering the waste, the material which is not having any value or nobody is interested in that, that is material which is having a totally no use, that material is considered to be a waste. And the new terminology resources and recovery has been added in that. So the resources is what? It is the source of any raw material or the any system that you are utilizing for generations of the product. So ultimately you are utilizing the raw material, and from that particular raw material you are generating a product. So your raw material is considered to be a important resources. When we are considering the recovery at present in a particularly this era, we are considering the recovery process is a very important, because from each and everything we are required to be recovered something. I think you might be knowing the gold price is increasing the day by day, because when we are considering the scenario, the resources for the particularly the gold, its purification process are very less, and because of the and the day by day demand is increasing, and because of that the price is going to be increased. So the resource and recovery as a very important part of the any process, and ultimately it is a part of our life. Now the very important thing is I will be discussing regarding the, mainly I am focusing on the hazardous waste, but for a very important thing we have to understand the solid waste also, because whenever we deal with a hazardous waste is nothing but it is a part of a solid waste. Now when we are considering the municipal solid waste, because when we are considering the hazardous waste, we have to consider the different type of the waste, which are nothing but it is a part of a ultimately the solid waste management system, and the hazardous waste is nothing but it is also one type of the solid waste. So generally in our particularly the definitions whatever we are considering the solid waste management, and as per the SWM 2016 Indian rule, so the municipal solid waste, plastic waste, construction and demolition waste, hazardous waste, biomedical waste, these all are considered to be a part of our particularly the solid waste management activity. No doubt hazardous waste is not directly the part, whatever the industrial hazardous waste is that, so that is not a part of ultimately the solid waste management system what the urban authority has to deal. So in a hazardous waste we have a generally two type of the hazardous waste. One, that is whatever the industry generating, and industrial hazardous waste has to be taken care by the industry or the industrial association or some particularly the activity which are related to that, and the hazardous waste which we are generating at a day to day or in our routine life, so that has to be taken care by the urban authority. So as we know, when we are considering, and nowadays the word is very famous, it is considered to be a solid waste management. But this solid waste management is considered to be a discipline, because the word we are utilizing, the management, so that includes all the discipline. It is considered to be an interdisciplinary branch, and ultimately the activity starting from the generation of the waste to the disposal of the waste, whatever the activities are, that is becoming the part of the solid waste. So here you can see in the figure the waste generations. After that we require the storage facility, then we require to collect it. Earlier there was a transfer and transport, and directly disposal was there, but now we have included here also processing and recovery as a very important component. And generally when we are dealing with any management activity, waste management activity, we have to consider, we have to deal with the quality and quantity of the waste. So generally the very simple terminology as far as the solid waste is concerned, and when we are dealing with a quantity, so ultimately it is directly proportional to the populations of the city. So it is a very important, and at present majority of the urban cities, they are considering this issue as a headache issue. And you can see there are some of the pictures that you can see. These are nothing but these are the sites of the India, and at present we are having a hills of particularly the solid waste, because the day by day our activities are increasing the generations of the solid waste, and our modern lifestyle is also responsible for this. So you can see majority of the Indian cities where we have the vertical hills of the waste, and at the same time the maximum resources of our urban authority in terms of energy and manpower we are utilizing to manage. This is a waste material having no value, and for that we are utilizing our maximum budget. So actually looking to these all the scenario, I think this is a very important slide. So in particularly this is the lady you can see, Almitra Patel, and she has taken a lead. She filed because the public litigation rule and the facility was given in India in 99, and she was the lady who has started and made the public litigations against the authority, against the government, and because of that the visionary mission of her, so that took the clear picture to the urban authority, and because of that MSW 2000 rules has been framed. So if you just see the blueprint of this, so that was mainly for the sustainable living, and generally in that the main thing, that is the citizens and their authority joint efforts has been considered here. So at present I think you can see majority of the Indian cities where we have this type of door-to-door waste collection system, and I think in India right now we are lucky because majority of the Indian city, 99.1% of the Indian cities, we have a door-to-door waste collection system. So the authority is coming at the doorstep to collect the waste. Earlier also it was the similar thing, but we have a different situations. But then also I think majority of you, and we have seen, though we have a clean city, we have a Surat and everything, the rankings are there, but then also in some part of the city we can see this type of the situations, and ultimately because of that whatever the MSW 2000 rule were framed, so ultimately urban authority could not get the achievement whatever they want, they have to achieve the indicators whatever been given. So at present also we have a situations in India. So generally if you just see the scenario overall management, so we take a very good lead in as far as the water and wastewater is concerned. Water and wastewater treatment plant, even we have a treatment technology, and we have developed expertise in such a way that even the typical waste, refractory waste, we are able to manage it very effectively. In air pollutions also we have created our mastery, and we are able to manage our problem up to some extent in most of the part of the cities. There are some exceptional in air pollutions, but then also we have a very good results. But if you just see the scenario of a solid waste and the hazardous waste management, so it is a particularly very poor as far as the Indian situations are concerned, and that is because of we do not have a expertise at the city level or at a managerial level, so which can take a lead and which can develop the best management practice as far as the Indian cities are concerned. So we have even the lack of awareness mechanisms. Our public are also not particularly aware, have not been aware, and because of that even the segregation routes that we are not achieving. And generally in a majority of the cities we have a single disposal site, and in majority of the cities they have to make available whatever is available, that they have to make it suitable. Even if you just see the community involvement at the city level, it is a very poor, and particularly if you just consider the overall scenario of the urban authority is a very poor. There is a no community involvement at each and every stakeholders activity. The very important mindset we have, and that is applicable to all city levels as well as in the industrial level, and that is considered to be not in my backyard. Nobody wants, everyone has to enjoy the fruits of cleanliness. Everyone enjoyed their backyard clean, and no one wants dustbin or the any sites nearby. And because of that we have a lot of issues as far as the land acquisition is concerned in the urban authority area. So these all are the issues, and because of that I think whenever we discuss the development, the health criteria, health indicators of the people, we are very poor as far as the public health is concerned. Our scenario for the environment is concerned, our economy, the day by day whatever the budget we spend, but at the same time we are not able to get the results of that, and the living conditions whatever we consider, so we have a major impacts of this all activities. So actually our MSW 2000 rule, so it is related to our solid as well as the hazardous waste management activity, and in that mainly these rules were framed because the authority, or you can say the government, wants the all Indian cities clean, but then also we were not able to achieve all the fruits of that. Only you can see here the silent features of MSW 2000 rule. If you see, just see the document, it's a very long document, more than 200 pages document, but if you just see the main silent features, then we have the compulsory, all the cities should have a door-to-door waste collection system, and in that we have achieved that particular target. Segregations of the waste we are not able to achieve, but government has started some initiatives to segregate the waste at a particularly at a city level. Generally the segregation is mainly for the for to control the disposal of the waste at a landfilling site, and to control the valuable resources, or to prevent to preserve our valuable resources as a land. But instead of that, right now the day by day our dumping, because the generally we are not having a segregation facility, and because of that most of the cities are not having success at a composting facility, because composting is mainly, it is only for the organic waste. And generally in a MSW 2000 rule, the clear-cut guideline was given that the only non-biodegradable waste should reach out to the landfilling site. But instead of that, in majority of the cities at present also, the complete whatever the waste we are generating, that is reaching at the particularly the landfilling site. And the city, it must be a container free city, zero container city, and this is just to make the Indian city landscape very clean and attractive, and that was the main features considered in MSW 2000 rule, and that is why it was given a due priority. But at the same time we are seeing that the day by day the situation is improving, but then also we are not having a very good results of particularly the management activity. And in a MSW 2000 rule, so after 15 years it has been observed that there are some of the lacunas. So to clear out that lacunas, we have modified that MSW 2000 rule, and it has been framed as a SWM 2016 rule. So actually this SWM 2016 rule is a very important rule as far as the solid and hazardous waste are concerned. So there were some of the lacunas, and because of that in MSW 2000 rules we were not able to achieve some of the standards, and we were not make all the Indian cities clean. And that is why we have made some of the government has made some of the provisions in such a way that we are able to, if we are considering this particular rule very effectively, then we are able to at least improve our Indian cities very effectively. So if you just see the MSW 2000 rule and SWM 2016 rule, so SWM 2016 rule also is a very important document, which is of more than, at least I think it is more than 300-400 pages document. So at least there are 4 or 5 important points that I am discussing, because ultimately it is related to our resource recovery and the resource management activity, whatever we are considering. So in a SW 2016 rule, because in MSW 2000 rule were framed and it was mainly emphasis the urban authority, it was targeting only urban authority, and because of that generally there were some of the, particularly the township or some of the areas which were not coming or where the SWM 2000 rules were applicable, and that is why SWM 2016 rule that has been extended beyond the municipal areas and some of the specialized area, like we have a township, airport, the special economic zone. So whatever the activity where the people are there and they are generating the solid waste, whatever is the type of the building or whatever is the type of the cluster, they are under the banner of SWM 2016 rule. And if you are not following that particular rule, then the very important step, that is the fine can be imposed, that has been discussed in SWM 2016 rule. So MSW 2000 rule may it was not given a priority for the fines, but in SWM 2016 rule the priorities has been given to impose the fine if the any organizations are not working effectively. So in a MSW 2000 rule, only the priorities were given for the dry waste segregation and the wet waste segregation. But in 2016 rule, the emphasis has been given, more priority has been given to the segregation of the waste. Though we are not giving dry waste and wet waste segregation, but as per the MSW 2000 rule, some of the special waste, whatever we are having, like a diaper, sanitary napkins, mosquito replicants, that are considered under the category of the domestic hazardous waste, and that has to be collected separately. That was given mandatory, and there are some of the particularly the door-to-door waste collectors, they are collecting separately. Otherwise, the simple segregation is wet waste and the dry waste that we have to follow as far as the waste is concerned. And you can see even the 6 coding system, color coding system has been developed for the segregations of the waste. And at the same time, there are some of the important guidelines that has been implemented in SWM 2016 rule. So that is as I have discussed, the fine has been fine you are required to be imposed. The non-biodegradable and the for the packing material, the concept has been implemented as far as the other type of the waste is concerned, like a cradle to gravel. So the waste which are not for the material or the waste for it, which is very difficult to treat. So ultimately the generator has to stop that particular activity, or they have to collect back it from the customers, and then you can have that type of the activity, and the generator or the company whosoever is manufacturing that, or they are responsible for that type of the waste, they have to consider and collect that particular waste, they have to treat that particular waste, and then they have to dispose that particular waste. That concept, that is cradle to gravel concept, has been given a due priorities in a SWM 2016 rule. So this is very important, because the in a particularly whatever the resources and recovery we are discussing here, so it is related to the 5R. Earlier we were having 3R technique, then we have a 4R techniques, and now as per the SWM 2016 rule we have a 5R techniques. So the reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and one more term has been included, and that is nothing but the refuse. So refuse means what? You have to the material whatever we require, that is only we have to collect and we have to buy. So I think at present we have so many molds, and the material, our per capita income of the person is increasing, so our purchasing power has been increased, and because of that sometimes हम लोग मॉल में जाते हैं and some unnecessary things we are buying, and ultimately we are increasing the burden to our natural resources. So the new techniques, that is the refuse with a 5R techniques, has been implemented, and the due priorities has been given in our solid waste management activity. Now earlier we were having only the concept, and generally we were dumping the waste onto the land, and now in a particularly SWN 2016 rule, so the landfill has been given a least priority, but instead of that the more priorities has been given to the source reductions and recovery option. So that is why the reductions, recovery and resources, that is a very important component of any waste management hierarchy, and at present as far as possible we are giving a due priorities in a particularly for the resources recovery and its management activity. So I will be discussing some of the important ways for which how we are following some of the important particularly the criteria as far as this is concerned, and ultimately how we are managing that we are considering in the one by one ways. So I think we all are familiar with the plastic and its pollutions related to that. So the plastic has made our life very simple because it is a very light material. Even you can see the majority of our medical equipments and medical diagnosis instrument where the plastic is playing a very vital role, and this is becoming nowadays, it is a headache for us, and for the urban authority also it is a very headache issue to manage with this, because it is a non-biodegradable material. So it will remain as it is for a longer time period, and that is why ultimately the management issues of whatever we are considering, it is becoming a headache issue. So if you just see the scenario, this is just a scenario I am giving it for the Gujarat city, and majority of the it is true for the Indian cities also, but the day by day our generations of the plastic is drastically increased. Now this is the different category of the plastics and the packing material whatever we are utilizing. So we have at least 7 category of the plastics, and depending upon the code we can at least I think 1, 2 and 3, that material you can recycle it up to some extent, and that material you can utilize it for a varieties of purpose. So ultimately we have to see that as far as possible the plastic, it should be less used as a material, but when there is no alternative, then we have to go for the recycling and recovery options. Now here there are some of the particularly the techniques available, and based on this particular techniques we can segregate the plastic up to some extent, and we can have a sorting of the plastic, and then we can reuse that particular plastic for a varieties of purpose. So here for Surat city I am just giving one example. You can see in this particular figure, so the rag pickers are there, and that rag pickers are segregating the waste, and this is the plastic recycling plant in Surat. So where you can see the particularly these all Amul the milk pouch. So whatever we are getting 500 ml plastic bag, milk bag, so that is segregated by these particular workers. So you can see the segregations of the plastics that is collected in the container. It is properly washed it, and very effectively it is washed for 2 or 3 times, and then particularly from this particular plastic waste we are sorting the plastics, because we have a varieties of the milk, and depending upon this milk category we have a varieties of the plastic bags available. So the sorting has been done, and then it has been the material plastics bags has been converted into the smaller size of the grains, and these all grain material further it is used for the varieties of the preparations of the other plastic material. So ultimately at least some material, some plastics that we are able to recycle it in a very effective way. So this is the plant available in Surat, and urban authority has is operating this plant on a PPP mode. So at present the plant is working well, and ultimately whatever the material, the grain type of the material we are getting, finally you can see the last photo. So that can be used for the varieties of the generations of the other plastic material. Particularly the grains of the plastic, it is finally packed, and that can be reused, and that can be sold to the other resources person. So the similar thing, we have a second type of the waste, and that is considered to be a construction and demolition waste. At present, construction and demolition waste is a very important waste, because earlier the scenario was the house whatever we were constructing, so the generation to generations were staying in that particular house. But nowadays the concept is generally we required every decades we go for the renovations of the house. If we have a marriage in our house, then also we go for the small renovations. So whenever we go for the renovations activity, it is generating a typical type of the construction and demolition waste. It is a very important, because the construction waste whatever we are considering, that is considered to be a bulky waste. So it is a very the weight of the construction material will be very high, and based on that the to deal with that particular waste is a difficult task. So we have in Surat also there is a one plant. It will be taking care of 300 tons per day construction and demolition waste. This is also a plant. It is operating on a public-private partnership mode, and generally the SMC has made an agreement with this particular company for 20 years, and the agreement starts from 2016 onwards. And government has given, SMC has given 3 acres of the land on a lease basis. And generally whatever the construction and demolitions waste at a particular site, or at an individual whatever we are generating, so it is the duty of the generator to send the waste at a construction and demolition waste. So in a construction and demolition waste, as I have discussed, the waste whatever is there, it is a bulky in nature, so the transportation cost is a very high, and that is why it is the duty of generator to send the waste at a processing site. Generally in a urban city, we can see whenever we go for the renovations work, so generally even the door-to-door waste collectors are not touching our construction and demolition waste, because generally that waste is a bulky in nature. So generally at a present, this particular construction and demolition waste, so that can take a particularly the care of construction and demolition, that is a concrete waste, and from that they are getting a sand, soil and aggregate, and ultimately that can be sell out to the local market. And from the particularly whatever the material they are getting it from the construction and demolition waste, they are even generating some of the new material which can be used for the paver blocks and that type of the situation. So ultimately it is also a some of the materials we are recovered, and that material we are again utilize it for our day-to-day life. So the construction and demolition waste whatever we are considering, that is also a very important part of our life, because ultimately we are able to recover some of the material at a particularly city level. So if you just see the particularly the process flow chart, then ultimately initial stage there will be a feeding system. The feeding system whatever we are considering, it is as per the guideline we have to consider, and it will be generally the mechanized system that we have to consider. There will be the sorting of the aggregate, and then whatever the aggregate we are considering, it is full of dust generally. So generally there will be a washing of the particularly aggregate very effectively, and then after washing whatever the aggregates what we are getting, so that you can recycle it very effectively. If it is of good quality, then you can utilize it again. You can send it in the market, and for the material, whatever recycled materials are that we can utilize it for the lower construction activity or the activity where we don't have to consider the beauty and all these aspects, so that we can utilize it very effectively. Whatever the water we are sprinkling on the aggregates and all, so that material also we can cover and we can utilize it for the again in the plant. So there will be a balance between whatever the water we utilize for the process, and then again water we collect it and then we recycle that particular water. So we have a stringent guideline as far as the construction and demolition waste is concerned, and as per the SWM 2006 rule, construction and demolition material or the waste is again a part of solid waste management activity. So generally we have this type of the flow chart in the city area. We have first we have a segregations of the waste, and that segregations it is a mechanized. So generally there are two category of the waste that we have to consider. It will be a less than 20 millimeter aggregates, and you may have a greater than 20 millimeter aggregates. And if you have the aggregates which will be greater than 20 millimeter aggregates, then you have to go for the primary and the secondary crushing, and ultimately that is required to be before crushing you have to go for the washing of the aggregates. Washing is mainly done because ultimately you have to control the dust, and to control the dust, and it will lead to the lesser air pollutions problem. And ultimately from that you may have a 6 millimeter aggregates, you may have a 10 millimeter, 20 millimeter and 40 millimeter aggregates. And if you have the plant are having a market for that, then they will sell out the aggregates directly. And if they are not having a market for these aggregate, because the generally at present we are not having the awareness, and because of that generally the aggregates and the material whatever are available from the construction and demolitions plant, so that will be used for making a varieties of the material. So generally we make get the paver blocks and that type of the material into the particularly again into the market. So you can see here this is the mechanized bale, so from where the material will be transported. So ultimately the material will be transported through the weight bridge, means particularly the mechanical belt conveyor. It will be there will be a crushing unit. So from the crushing you may convert the material into the coarse or the medium size of the particles. You can see here the coarse and the medium size of the particles. So ultimately you can collect this type of the material, and based on the market availability you can sell out the particular material, or you can have a directly utilizations of the material. So ultimately finally from this particularly the recycled sand whatever we are having, so you can utilize it, or you can see this type of the paver blocks has been prepared, and this particular paver blocks generally it's a very good material. Even the urban authority may utilize that material in their particular plants, gardens, whatever they are having, or it may be utilized for the generally it may be sell out to the other parties. So you can see these are the materials which generally we are constructing, or we are able to get it from the recycling activity of the construction and demolition waste. So again it is a one type of the activity, because the resources whatever we are utilizing for the generations, so day by day whatever the new material we require, so ultimately we have to consider so many resources for the manufacturing process. So instead of that, with the similar resources we are able to convert the material into a better recycling products, and ultimately we can utilize in our day-to-day life. So at the present we have in some of the particularly the organizations, there are so many organizations, they are converting the organic waste, they are having a organic waste converter, and according to that if you have a completely segregated waste, so the complete segregated waste you are able to convert into the manure type of the material. It is just like a biocompost. It is not like a fertilizer, or you can say this biocompost is like a bioconditioners. So ultimately that may improve the soil conditions up to some extent. But mind well, this is the process where it is feasible only for the organic waste. So we have a simple reactor, and in that particular reactors generally you can see this is the Surat Municipal Corporation's 1 ton organic waste converter. So here the organic waste will be converted, I mean there will be a composting machine. So whatever the generally, I think you all are familiar with vermicomposting and all this activity. So whenever we are dealing with this, so the composting activity will be in a reactor, and generally composting activity where we have to wait for 30 to 45 days because it is a natural process. But nowadays there are some of the particularly the microbial culture that people have developed, and here also the company have developed, the company is from Indore and they have utilized, they have developed their culture, and that culture they are adding into the particularly the with the organic waste. So ultimately that is reducing their the process time, retention time. So instead of 30 to 45 days, they are able to get 15 to 21 days. They are able to get the material like a compost or the bioconditioners, and ultimately that can be sell out as far as the local market is concerned. But at present, the people are not aware, even the farmers are not aware, and that is why generally this type of the material they are not collecting, and generally urban authorities are not getting the revenue, but they are generally majority of the urban authorities they are giving free of cost to the farmers. So generally this is the activity. You can see the this is the only organic waste, may be feasible for the fruit market waste, or it may be for the vegetable market waste. Here also this is the 1 ton particularly the plant, it is mainly for the vegetable market waste. So finally you can see here the process, and finally this type of the compost material you are able to get it, and ultimately that you can utilize it for the varieties of the purpose. So ultimately whatever the resources and recovery whatever we are considering, that is very important as far as our day-to-day life is concerned. So this is one of the plant from the Pune, where also you can see only organic waste, and these organic waste it is processed, because in the composting process you want the surface area of the particles very fine, and ultimately you have to increase the surface area, and that is why generally the grinding activity is preferable. So you can see here the grinding or the sorting means the particles are to be cut into the smaller size, and this is the reactor. So ultimately in the closed reactors there the process will be going on, and finally you are getting the material, and that is the compost material you are getting it. Now at the same time the city means the in a particularly our guideline, it is already mandatory mentioned that all the city has to go for the composting plant, and in the composting plant it is mandatory for all the cities, and generally we are very poor in the segregations, right? So when we are considering the segregations activity, so in a segregations, if we are having a very good segregation practice, then we can have a very good compost plant, and ultimately we can manage the compost plant very effectively. But once, because in a compost plant our the waste will be converted into the compost by the bacteria, and ultimately the bacteria will survive only in a particularly the only it will be feeded on the organic waste, and because of that it is very essential that we should have a segregation program very effectively. So at present as per our SWM 2016 rule, all the cities has to go for the for the development of the city compost plan. It is mandatory for tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and that is why majority of the plants they have developed this type, they are trying to develop this type of the trommel. So where ultimately there are the segregation, there will be a segregations of the biodegradable waste and non-biodegradable waste, and because of this biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste, you are able to consider the composting activity very effectively. You can have a trommel of 3 or 4 size depending upon the waste characterizations whatever we are having, and the non-biodegradable material you can collect it separately, and you can have a preparations of the RDF type of the material. RDF is nothing but it is a refuse derived fuel, so you can convert the material into the briquettes or the pallets, and with the help of that that RDF activity you are generating a material which will be having some calorific value, and that material you can utilize for the varieties of the activity. Definitely RDF means the pelletization's RDF process at present it is under the developing mode. India is trying to develop the RDF policy, and because when we are utilizing the RDF material in which the other material will be there, if we burn that particular material, that may arise other issues, so air pollution issues, and that is why at present utilizations of RDF again we are going to develop the policy. Even particularly pollution control board is also trying to develop some of the policy matters. So generally with a coal some percentage of the RDF may be utilized. So at present RDF policy and in India it is under the developing stage. Most probably in 2025 June that policy, the steering committee will complete their work and we will be having our RDF policy. This is one more plant. I think those who are from Goa, or they have many of you have visited the Goa city compost plant. It is working well, and the cities where we have a less population, so generations of the waste quantity is very low. So in that particular situation, generally we are able to succeed. But when we are considering the city like a Surat, city like a Bombay, the generation, if I'm just giving you example of Surat city where the generations of the waste is more than 2200 metric ton per day. So the segregation is not an easy task to deal when we are dealing with a 2200 metric ton. So the very important thing is the segregation at the source. When we are generating the waste, we should have a habit of that the consumer have a habit of that they have to collect the waste separately, and for that the urban authority has to make a very stringent actions. If you are not collecting the waste separately, the person who are coming for the collections of the waste, they will not reach out or they will not collect your waste. So that is the only solutions we are able when we are under the getting a resources and recovery. That is the only feasible solutions that we have to consider at a city level. So generally here also we have a compost plant, but this particular compost plant, so where we are getting a, this plant is considered to be a particularly on a biomethanation activity. So where we have an anaerobic activity, and only the organic waste plus other type of the waste, because particularly Goa where we have a distillery, and so that organic waste only is utilized in this particular plant. And from this particular plant, this is based on the anaerobic digestion activity, or you can say biomethanation activity. So the at the initial state the waste will be waste is segregated. So generally there is a density separation concept they are utilizing. So the air will be blown and on this particular floor, and as the air is passed through this particular floor, the lighter material will be collected, and based on the particular material will be separated out very effectively. At the same time, there are some material, because we have a bulky material nowadays in the waste stream, and to collect the bulky material, segregate the bulky material, there is a manual sorting also. So in the plant it is a mechanical sorting as well as the manual sorting. So whenever there is a manual sorting, so the plastic and non-biodegradable material is separated out very effectively, because if it is not separated out, it will not, means the plant will not run in a effective way. So the plastics and the bulky material will be separated out, and it has to be taken care in another way. There is an anaerobic digestion. So in the anaerobic digestions, the methane gas is generated, and that methane gas again they are utilizing for the varieties of purpose. So generally they are generating the, earlier they were generating the electricity, but at present I have read one report, and at present they are not generating the electricity. And organic waste they are treating with a composting facility. They have the composting drum, and in this drum is like a reactor, and generally from this composting they are able to generate the compost which we can utilize it for the soil conditioners activity. And even the material from which they are generating the RDF also, and that RDF they are utilizing, means particularly the Goa, in which there are so many, particularly the hotels, so that people they are purchasing and they are utilizing for activities. Actually, RDF directly, it should not be sell out in the market, but at present, up to some extent they have given a priorities and they are selling it up to some extent into the market. Now at the same time, we have so many cities, so where we have a compost plant, particularly in Nasik. So where the Nasik municipal corporations, they have tried it for the particularly the plant which is a very very active plant, and generally this particular plant it is based on the compost plant as well as for the RDF plant. Now in a composting plant, ultimately finally they are getting the compost material. Generally Nasik is very famous for the particularly the fruits agriculture activity, and at present nowadays the people are, instead of chemical fertilizers, people preferred organic waste, and generally that is why the plant whatever are generating the compost, so that is sell out at a very fine price. So this is the plant where they are generating, urban authority is able to generate the revenue, and they have made one company, and actually the all the process and the managerial activity has been done by this particular Nasik Waste Management Private Limited. They are generating the RDF also. So RDF, from that RDF also generally they are generating, and then that is used for the varieties of the purpose in a particularly the small scale industries. So here you can see here also the waste whatever we are generating, so ultimately it will be cut out, or it will be sorting out into the smaller size, and ultimately from that you are getting a compost like material, and that compost you can utilize it for the varieties of purpose. So even there are so many cities they have started, because the waste to energy program whatever we are considering, it is a very very important, and all the cities indicators in that they have to go for the waste to energy waste to energy plans. So you can see here there are so many activities. This is the activity for the Bangalore city, and they have developed particularly the big size of the trommel, because the generations of the Bangalore city waste is very very high. So generally the capacity of the plant is also very on a higher side, and they have generated the big size of the trommel. So you can see the trommel, and with this particular trommel, so generally there are 3-4 grade of the trommel, and based on that the material they are whatever they are getting, so finally that material they are going for the composting operation. So ultimately the plant works well, but for that the managerial aspect you require the better segregation steps. So once you are having a better segregation steps, then you are able to get the results of the composting plant or any waste to energy plant very very good. There is an example of the Vijayawada, particularly the city where also we have a biomethanation plant, Lucknow city. So these all plants work well because it is for the small capacity, and the segregations they have followed two type of the segregations, and based on that it works well. So this is the particularly the city Mysore. So I think you know the Mysore is the city where generally 100% segregation is considered. So this is the city where generally we can say 100% segregation facilities are there, because they have implemented a very stringent guidelines as far as the segregation is concerned, and because their segregation practice is very fine, their composting plant is most effective or the most economical plant in India. So they are able to generate a very good quality of the compost, and that's compost is considered to be as a organic fertilizer, and that can be sell out as a organic fertilizers. So you can see here the city compost city, the Mysore city. So they have a segregations practice, and that segregations manually as well as the mechanical sorting. So you can see here the manual, the workers are segregating the some of the typical waste like a plastic pouch, shoes, bottles, everything. And at the same time they have the mechanical segregations also at a transfer station. So finally in the composting they are able to get a very good material, because only biodegradable material is there, and they are able to handle it very effectively. And their segregation practice are in such a way that they are collecting the other valuable materials, other valuable products from whatever the waste that they are getting it at the site. So these all examples are nothing but these are the examples where the people are trying for the resources and recovery, and these resources and recovery is applicable to the solid waste, plastic waste, construction and demolition waste. So these all where we can go for the recovery of the material. Finally the recovery of the material will be helpful for the particularly for the minimizations of our resources. Now at the same time we have some of the solid waste which are having a typical characteristics in nature. So generally the waste, solid waste which are having a typical characteristics like ignitability, reactivity, corrosivity or the toxicity. So then waste we are considering these as a hazardous waste, and according to this hazardous waste generally this is the material we are considering, either it may be harmful to the public health or it is a very dangerous to the environment. So generally you can see this type of the signs. This is the first particularly the signs that you can utilize it for the particularly the varieties of the material. Generally whenever I think you can see the skull and bone sign, so this is considered to be a very dangerous material, and in that particular situations we have to deal the hazardous waste very effectively. Now when we are considering the resources and recovery from the hazardous waste, there are two important things that we have to consider. We have some of the domestic hazardous waste, and domestic hazardous waste mainly it includes, because generally it is a infectious waste. When we are considering the domestic hazardous waste, it is considered to be an infectious waste, and when we are dealing with infectious waste, generally we don't have to deal with any resource and recovery options as far as the hazardous waste is concerned. So in a hazardous waste we may have a different type of the category of the waste, but from the infectious waste we never have to think for the resources and recovery, because ultimately it deals with the transmission of the diseases. The second very important thing is when we are considering the biomedical waste is nothing but it is also one type of the infectious waste, and that is why also the resources and recovery we are not considering from that particular waste. So actually the hazardous waste which are infectious in nature, so they are mainly omitted from the resources and recovery activity. Now the particularly the other hazardous waste generally whatever the industries are generating, so these industry whatever the hazardous waste are generating, so we should have some of the provisions, and we with particularly the typical guidelines we are able to convert, and we are able to utilize some of the important hazardous waste for the varieties of the purpose. So at the same time all the pollution control board, central pollution control board, ministry of environment and forest and climate change, they have made the stringent guidelines, and at the same time day by day they are changing the guidelines as per the need and as per the study whatever the available. So it is a very important thing that we are able to convert some of the important hazardous waste material before it proceed for the treatment, if we are able to utilize it in an effective way. But mind well, always we have to take care, because the hazardous waste are considered to be a typical category of the waste where the flammability is the characteristics, reactivity is the characteristics, and the corrosivity and the toxicity is the characteristics. So here I am discussing some of the modification that has been made by the Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Board to the industry. So this whatever now we are discussing, that is related to the industrial environment. Earlier whatever we have discussed, that is related to the urban authority environment. So I think there are so many companies there where as a raw material they are utilizing the hazardous waste. Now, mind well, when you are utilizing the hazardous waste as a raw material, the very important thing is you have to convert that, you have to consider that raw material as a fresh raw material only. You cannot use that particular material as a byproduct of some companies or like that. So the very important thing is the when we are utilizing the raw material in a particularly process, it is very mandatory that we have to utilize the fresh raw material only. And that is why generally in a consent of the company, generally this type of the statement they are writing, unit should use only fresh raw material only. The second very important thing is nowadays, because particularly when we are dealing with the industry, so the very important thing is the time constraint and the very important thing is the financial constraint. So you may able to cope up the market demand once you are having a raw material available and once your plant is working and you have a effective financial support. And to deal this thing, sometimes what happens, the industry may interpret in a different way. Instead of the fresh raw material available nahi hai, then they may go ahead with some other companies or some other type of the material. But mind well, nowadays each and every industry where they are utilizing the hazardous material, so generally as per the hazardous waste management criteria, from where they have to get it the material, so that is also mentioned in their particularly consent. So generally whatever is the material, whenever they are dealing with a hazardous category of the raw material, from
Hello. Ma'am, your voice is not audible. Hello. Am I audible to you, ma'am?
am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes. Now you're audible. Please continue.
Okay. So when we are considering the industrial premises, it is very mandatory that we have to follow, and as an auditor we have to check this. Now it may be possible that there are some of the waste or the material whatever they are generating. So the industry may be generating some of the byproduct or some of the material, and that material may be utilized for some of the industry as a raw material, or they may be processing that particular material and they may get some final product from that particular material. So in that particular situation, actually hazardous waste management and rule means rule under rule number 9, the industry may be permitted or they may be authorized to sell out this type of the material to the end users whosoever are interested in the processing of that particular waste. So that may be applicable as per the resource utilizations, and you can see here specific conditions under the hazardous waste management and TM is nothing but it is a transboundary movement of the hazardous waste. And according to that, you can see here generally the one example is that this is the particularly the waste, this is the material, whatever is the material they are the particularly the raw material they are processing, and from that they are getting a spent acid. Now this is the company, they are generating the spent acid but they don't want to utilize it in their process. So ultimately they can sell out this particular, you can see in the consent it is already given, spent H2SO for collection, storage, transportation and disposal by and sell out to the authorized users. Now here it is a very mandatory that you are permitted to sell out this material because you are not interested in this material. So under CCA rule number 9, the permission may be given to you, but for that you have to
She is not audible.
Again, ma'am, I guess You have lost the connection, internet connection. Am I audible to you, ma'am? Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, you are not audible. Your video is synchronizing, but your voice is not coming.
Is it? અહીંયા તો બતાવે છે બધું માઇક ને બધું
હા,
બરાબર.
હવે આવે છે, મેડમ. હવે આવ્યો. Please continue.
Okay, can you see my PPT?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Hello. Hello. Try to speak something, ma'am.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
તમારો વિડિયો ક્લિયર આવે છે, મેડમ. અવાજ નથી આવી રહ્યો. I guess there is some issue with the network because video બી જે આવે છે ને એ બ્રેક થઈને આવે છે.
મેમ ટ્રાય કરે છે.
હા હા. Is it working, ma'am? You can try to rejoin the Meet by leaving the Meet. ઇન્ટરનેટ સ્પીડ જો ઓછી પડતી હોય તો વિડીયો બંધ કરી દો મેડમ, વાંધો નહીં.
છે. હવે સંભળાય છે તમને?
હા હા સંભળાય છે મેડમ.
ઓકે ચાલો. ઓકે 1 મિનિટ. Is it okay? સંભળાય છે હવે?
હા હા મેમ. Now it's audible.
ઓકે.
How much portion is still remaining?
Only
If
3
it is
4
covered,
slides.
then we can take up the question answer session.
ના સર, એક 5 જ મિનિટ થશે, નહીં વાંધો હોય.
Okay, okay, no issues, ma'am.
Is it visible?
Ma'am,
Is it visible?
hi, now it is visible.
ઓકે.
તમારો અવાજ થોડો ધીરો આવે છે.
હા, હજી હું ચાલુ કરું એટલે થોડો મોટો કરી દઉં.
હા હા, okay.
So this what we were discussing. So actually, as per this, the industry, industry means the receiver and the collector, receiver and the sender both has to maintain the passbook system. So I think you can see here the passbook system, where we can have the industry has to maintain this type of the passbook system, and ultimately the copy of the same that they have to report it into the pollution control board. So generally, like whatever the passbook we are maintaining in our bank account, so the receiver will the debit that particular quantity, and the receiver will credit that particular quantity, and the sender will debit that quantity, and it should be properly marked into the passbook system. So it is necessary, mandatory to maintain the passbook system for the material or the chemicals whatever you are dealing under the rule number 9. And generally we can have to maintain the manifest system. So I think majority of you are familiar when we are dealing with a hazardous waste. So whenever there is a movement of the hazardous waste, so generally we have to follow the manifest system. So the similar thing that we have to follow it in the e-waste management system also, because in the e-waste also the people are trying to get some of the parts and the components legally or illegally. So here also we go for the resource and recovery, but the always whatever the resources and recovery we are dealing, we should have a very good scientific program for that. The haphazard manner program, whatever, or the illegal, the rag pickers and recyclers are there, and if they do that type of the activity, then ultimately it may be, sometimes it may be a hazardous, or it may add some of the particularly the activities which are ultimately finally may be responsible for a one type of the disaster situations. Particularly in India, if we just see, there are so many, particularly the industries are very important, and because of the industry also only we are able to convert a very good GDP and we are stand in the international market. But at the same time, when we are considering the urbanization and industrial activity, so these are generating a varieties of the solid as well as the hazardous waste. At the same time, we have a societal pressures, political pressures, and because of that, if you just see the scenario, we have a very good rules, but ultimately, if you just see the implementation side, though we have a stringent guidelines, Central Pollution Control Board, Ministry, each and every state pollution control boards are actively working, but we just see the scenario, it is a very poor. And at the same time, what is the important thing, because we have to consider the limitations of the authority or the government also, because the rules are coming day by day. We have a very the rules whatever we are coming, so ultimately sometimes we have a strict implementations and sometimes we have a strict norms ultimately, and without knowingly we are implementing the rules, and that may be coming sometimes the situations in a practical industrial industry not effective. There are so many cases that is filed, PILs are filed, NGT's case are reported, but then also we see the results or the whatever the overall narrations we require, so it is a very in a poor situations. And ultimately because of that, urban authorities, they are sometimes we see very good data, but if you just see the implementation side, we are very poor. And because of that, the very important thing is the cleanliness and sustainability, it is always questionable. So for this already we know the game is on, and we have the competitions like clean cities and all. And because of that, each and every cities are trying their best for the implementations of the resource recovery management of the system, door to door waste collections, monitoring the landfilling sites, and overall to maintain the cleanliness of the society. So this is always we blame the industry that kya zarurat hai top clean cities, and why we go for this, whatever we do, we are wasting more monies. But ultimately for awareness and for increasing the community participants, and sometimes these particular programs are getting a good overall. So we know we have already started the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and all, so this is because ultimately we required ultimately not good numbers, but ultimately it is the one type of the indicators that is a very essential for the sustainable development group. Now when we are talking about the industry are also becoming the part of this. I think you might be knowing there are so many CSR activities, and CSR activities are the activities where the companies are promoting that they are doing something for the society and for the stakeholders and the public. And there are so many activities whatever we are considering. So the resources and recovery is the activity where they are giving a due priorities as far as the CSR activities are concerned. No doubt the CSR activity is for the education, is for the medical, but at the same time they are giving a due priorities to the particularly renewable sources, waste minimization, these all program, because ultimately that leads to the particularly the effective sustainable goal. We know sustainable development goals. This is designed for mainly for our benefit and ultimately overall globally sustainable development, for the sustainable development. If we are not achieving the sustainable goals, so in the near future we are not able to have a very good conditions. We do not have a very good well-beings and the healthy communities and society. And that is why I think the new race, that is the ESG race, has been started by so many companies, and companies are promoting their business, and they are again part of the sustainability activity. Why? Because the sustainable goals are according to the for the prosperity of the people. The main concept of this, no one leave behind, and for no one leave behind, only government cannot play a role, on only authority cannot play a role. And that is why the government has joined hands together with the industry for making and for helping them in achieving the sustainable development goal. And that is why we have a ESG and CSR activities. And these ultimately activities are also promoting the resources and recovery minimizations. And for the urban authority also the composting plant, and for that they are giving a financial support. So ultimately, because the resources and recovery is nothing but it is a one type of the important component in our sustainable development. So that's all from my side. There are so many ESG activities that we are considering under this. And thank you all, and I'm sorry because actually there was so many interruptions, and because of that some of the slides and you were not able to get my voice clearly. So if you
No,
are
no
having any
problem,
questions,
ma'am. No
if you are having
problem.
any questions, I am happy to answer.
Yes, there were few questions from the participants. You can stop sharing so that your internet connectivity
Yeah,
can be
1 minute.
restored.
1 minute.
Yes.
1 minute.
Yes, ma'am. The participants who had some questions in the chat box, can you please ask the question? Yes, Dr. Gaurav Agrawal.
Uh, Good evening, madam.
Good evening.
Madam, regarding industry have their CCA. In their CCA, there are lots of hazardous waste. The list of hazardous like 20 or 25 based upon the
uh,
industry.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
how to correct sample means how to decide that these sample we have to take for further testing like ETP sludge or ME's
Residue,
waste something.
distillation residue, spent carbon, there are so many.
Yeah, or already they have defined that these waste are using for the co-processing to the cement industry, right? So how you select that these waste we have to take for the sampling for further analysis?
So see, as far as possible, the waste which generally which are taking care by some particularly the third party. So generally that waste is required to be taken care, and for that the sampling is definitely required. No doubt, we know that even in the industry sometimes that they will say, okay, madam, ये waste तो नहीं है available अभी, नेक्स्ट विजिट पे मिलेगा. So it may be possible, but as far as possible जो TSDF site पे जाता है, co-processing, if the waste is going, then if you are not taking sample it will be okay. But ETP sludge, when it is going to the TSDF site, or it may be going to further incineration, so that type of the waste is required to be analyzed in a very very effective way.
Okay, madam.
Yes, Miss Labdisha.
Hello, ma'am. I
Yeah.
have one question that is there any thumb rule or calculation for domestic waste generated from industry?
So actually, if the domestic waste, whatever we are generating from the industry, again it is also a very important component of the CCA. And generally, the domestic waste, whatever we are considering from the industry, it have mainly three criteria. One, that is the particularly the food waste that will be generated from the canteen. Second, that is a paper waste, major waste that will be a paper waste, and generally because of the office and clerical work, whatever the waste we are generating. And third, generally it may be considered to be a miscellaneous waste, so that includes some other typical type of the waste. So generally it depends upon the number of workers working, and generally if the industry is having a canteen facility, then the food waste generations will be very very more. And if the industries are not having canteen facility, then in that type of the situations the food waste generations will be less. But definitely in the industry you have a paper waste will be very very high.
Okay, ma'am. But ma'am, is there any calculation like per capita calculation? If there is 40 numbers of worker, then this much of domestic waste will be generated. Any per
No,
capita thumb
generally
rule
there
or
are no
calculation?
criteria or that type of the guideline available. But what you can do, you can have at least 1 week of criteria, 1 week of calculations. So generally for a
Okay.
1 week or a maximum 20 days, you can go ahead with the calculations, whatever the paper waste you are generating. So that you have to quantify it, and then based on that you can have your thumb rule. Generally it will be vary from industry to industry. So right now we do not have any standards for that.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, my second question is there if any building having asbestos sheets and now we
Yes,
are demolishing that building, so that
yes.
asbestos sheets will be considered as hazardous waste or construction and demolition waste.
So actually, asbestos, in a construction and demolition waste, there is a specific in a particularly rule. I think the rule number 9.13 that says how to decommission the asbestos waste. So ultimately, if you are having a more quantity of the asbestos waste, then how to take care? There is a specific clear-cut guidelines are available. So in that particular situation, you have to deal with that. But when you have a large quantity, because in a particularly small quantity, generally particularly the proponent of the project will are not able to follow that, because when the quantity is less, then to follow the methodology is not, it may not be economical.
Okay, okay. So, ma'am, is there any quantity defined and how much quantity will be considered as asbestos? अगर इतना मतलब quantity में asbestos generate हो रहा है, minimum this much of quantity, then it will be considered as hazardous waste.
So in a particularly construction and demolition waste guideline, it is already there. So you can refer that
Okay,
particular
okay, ma'am.
para. 13, I think 9.13, one point that is related to this. And even the decommissioning
Yes.
guidelines are already given.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Ma'am, my last question is that if there is any furnace dross generating from the battery waste recovery, so it will be disposed as hazardous waste.
So actually, battery waste at present, we are not having a very stringent guideline, but a battery waste where we are having a typical component like lithium and all. So generally, it may come under the category of the hazardous waste. At present, it is not, because generally it is a heavy metal. So generally,
Yes.
the lithium may be considered as a special type of the waste. It should be taken care. But I think this is also in a pipeline. So we have a battery management particularly, but that rule is considered to be as a draft rule. At present, it is not finalized. So otherwise, we will be having we require very stringent guidelines, because nowadays we have started utilizing the e-waste,
Yes,
e-vehicles
ma'am.
very effectively.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Oh, okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And
Yes, Hitesh Soni.
Hello, madam. Good evening.
good evening, sir.
Madam, what is the criteria for the hazardous waste to landfilling and incineration?
Okay, this is a very good question. So actually, the very important thing is, if you just see the cost aspect, it will be a drastical difference. Okay, so when you are
Yes.
going for the hazardous waste, you are sending the hazardous waste to the TSDF site, and then when you are disposing the waste with a incineration. But as far as possible, incineration waste, it should be considered, means like you have a, because incineration is actually, it is we are considering this as a treatment, but actually it is not a treatment. You are converting the solid waste into the gaseous. So
Okay.
actually, the very important thing is, the all the waste, it should not be incinerated, but the waste which are very typical in nature, and for that the other options are not available, and in near future also, if you dump it into the land, it may create a problem. So for that type of the waste, definitely we have to go ahead with the incineration. So I think the sludge which are containing the vinyl sulfonate and that type of the material, the non biodegradable material. So for
Non-biodegradable.
so that type of the waste, we don't have any particularly the right treatment technology. So that waste, if we dump it into the land, because of the contaminations and other issues, we may have a problem. So in that type of the waste, we may go ahead with a incineration facility. But at checking point of view, the solid waste, even the laboratory exercise is a very tedious. So hazardous waste classifications and the testing is a very difficult task.
Very,
Even
very.
nobody is doing in a very effective way, and we do not have that type of the laboratory facilities also. So to go for the leachate test, you require the TCLP, and there's all. Even for the toxicity test, you have to
Toxic.
go for
As a
the,
TOC.
yeah. That is why, as far as possible, uh, the land which is a very easy, that we can dispose it with, means particularly we have some of the components, but it is not so problematic. That land, that ways you can send it to the TSDF site very effectively.
Okay. Okay, madam.
Ma'am, I have one question. that
Huh.
while taking the samples for pesticide industry,
Huh.
uh, composite sampling, soil sampling, what
Huh.
should be the depth of the sampling, and for composite sampling in and around 500 meters of any pesticide industry,
Yeah,
how
this will
many
be the new
samples should
guideline.
be taken here?
Actually, when we are collecting the hazardous waste or the means of the soil sample, na, so at least we require to excavate at least 1 to 1.2 meter minimum depth is required.
One
The
point.
second very
Okay.
important, you require to means you have to inform the at least industry, you make a provision for JCB, because actually
Okay.
1 to 1.2 meter manually it will be a means somewhat time consuming. The second very important thing is particularly the area whatever nearby, so at least we have to consider the area of at least 100 means we can say 5 meter by 5 meter particular area, and particularly whatever the area we are having, we can make a small pit, and we can have a sampling from all the four sides. We can collect some samples and then we can make it composite. So that will be the
Okay.
only easiest way, and otherwise it will be somewhat difficult. But at least 5 kg samples you can collect it, and we can make a one rectangle, four corners, and one center. So five side, we you
Five.
can mix
Okay.
it, and then you can consider the composite sampling.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Generally 1 to 1.2 meter depth will be preferable, but at least you have to see that nearby means particularly the water level also. Before that you can check it if it is the data available. Nahi hai, then
Okay.
I think 1 meter will be okay, 1 to 1.2 meter will be okay.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, Mr.
any
Amir Mullah.
Hello, ma'am. This is not a question, just a query. We have means household sanitary waste at
huh?
household level in housing societies also, and in schools, colleges, everywhere, and the institutions also.
Okay.
So how to deal with that? Means household sanitary waste comes under a biomedical waste or under a hazardous waste, and
Yeah,
means we have a
actually,
lot of awareness about it, but I want to know it from a legal point of view.
so actually when you are having a particularly the I think the whatever you are talking is a means it is a solid waste, right?
Ma'am, I'm specifically talking about the sanitary waste where we have diapers and sanitary pads, that
So
kind of a waste.
actually, that waste is to be considered. It should be collected separately, and generally, it should be. Means I think as per the new guideline, some of the door-to-door waste collectors are having a yellow color some box. So at least you have to put it in that. It should be collected separately, and actually, we don't require any treat. We do not have any treatment, and we should not have it because it is considered to be an infectious waste. So actually that waste is considered to be it is to be considered as a incinerated waste, because for the infectious waste we do not require another, means we don't want to take a chance, because there may be a transmission of the disease
Yes.
in any mode. So that is why
So
that type of the waste,
at
even in the
institution
institution
level, we
also,
maintain,
because I
ma'am,
think
that.
yeah, because I think you might be knowing there are the small sanitary pad
Yes, yes, yes. We
disposals
have the
vending machines
sanitary
are available.
incinerators.
Yeah,
Yeah, at institutional level, it becomes easier, but at a
yeah,
household level, means at a housing societies, means
it is difficult.
yeah, and there is no legal awareness. Means from a law point of view, it should be treated at a society level, or it's a responsibility of a corporation. If you can explain this part little bit, then that will
So
help, madam.
actually, as per 2016 rule, अगर आप कोई भी देखो ये जो particularly even the sanitary pads and all, so it is the duty of them. So if you approach some of the particularly the company na, so they are providing the CSR fund में you may have some society or complex, then they people are helping you, even for the schools and colleges building they are helping. But the very important thing is the people are not ready. I think whatever we have seen, so if the people are ready for doing this type of the particularly the treatment facility, then I think the best way is you can approach some of the companies, and I think they will definitely help you to provide this type of the facilities at a small complex or small apartment also.
Ma'am, in connection to this, one more question, this last one. When we
Okay.
deal with refuse derived fuel or waste
Hmm.
to energy technologies,
Yeah.
you showed some peaks. Most of the time, it is observed that those plants are working on paper, but on actually, if you visit the plants, then the situations are somewhat different.
Yeah.
So, uh, actually, whatever we say, most of those things remains on paper only, and in practice, it becomes like results are not that much.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at very high-end instruments and technologies, what I feel, okay, problems are at a ground, means at a source level. So we should find more solutions at a source level.
Yeah, that is definitely fine, and that is also required to be implemented. The RDF actually whatever we are considering, अगर हम कंपोस्ट बनाते कुछ भी है, तो अल्टीमेटली कोई भी कंपनी है ना, उनको अल्टीमेटली फाइनेंस चाहिए, सपोर्ट चाहिए, और उनकी रिकवरी और या तो उनकी इकोनॉमिकल बैलेंस होनी चाहिए. So whatever the end product you are getting, ultimately it should be sellable. सेलेबल होगा तो ही प्लांट फिजिबल होगा, एंड देन दे विल वर्क, अदरवाइज तो सारा पेपर पे ही रहेगा. सो कंपोस्ट में एक्चुअली द कंपनी वॉट एवर द वर्क दे आर डूइंग, तो अल्टीमेटली प्राइस इट शुड बी वेरी वेरी लो. कंपोस्ट है तो बिकॉज फार्मर्स विल नॉट द परचेज कंपोस्ट एट अ वेरी हाई प्राइस. Second very important thing is when we are considering the RDF, so even a government, even if only if you use RDF, na, then your boiler will not work. So the very important thing is you require some the studies, or you require some of the effective measures. So you can you can make a composition. So you can have a 30 percentage of coal, 70 percentage of coal, and 30 percentage RDF. But at least then also you require to study that thing. If you are utilizing 70-30, then what will be the change in air pollution? That is required to be studied, and then we can take the decisions. So at present we are lacking in that. हमारा जो सारी policy making decisions है without study हो रहा है. So ये तो हमें लग रहा है,
Oh,
but ultimately whatever is there, so
yes.
that we have to implement.
What I observed, ma'am, there are some plants around Pune also. They are treating plastic waste and thermocol waste, and they are producing like not a diesel. It is like in a fuel. Uh,
Biodiesel.
it- yeah, biodiesel, but there is no bio component in it because
हाँ.
the raw material used for making it is a plastic or thermocol or derivatives of plastic. Do we have any policy to use those type of fuels as an source, or it is still illegal?
No, actually, at present we do not have, but policy making decision तो होगा, means because earlier we were having that type of the policy, लेकिन उसका आगे कुछ नहीं हो पाया. बायोडीजल के लिए बीच में there was a one committee and they have started initiated the work, but after that because of some issues, that particular policy right now not it will not in a proper way, or they were not able to justified because the priorities has been given to that particular committee. So at present we are not having, but in the day in a coming year we might be have that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Yes, Mr. Vishal Vagasya.
हेलो
you. Hello.
मैडम, अभी जो एक ईपीआर सिस्टम लागू हुई है, 3-4 साल हो
हाँ.
गए हैं, उसमें
हाँ.
जो प्लास्टिक वेस्ट है उसके लिए क्रेडिट देते हैं सभी सप्लायर, जो भी रिसाइकलर है और जो
हम्म.
जनरेटर है उसको. तो क्या ऐसी सेम सिस्टम ई वेस्ट में भी आ रही है?
So actually, e-waste make the concept is cradle to grave, because actually the very important point in a e-waste is we cannot, means as a common public or the whatever the sites we are having, TSDF site or ये सारा है, e-waste is containing a heavy metal. So heavy metal is problematic in that, and that is why we know even in the industry also to treat with a to deal with a heavy metal is a somewhat difficult task. तो आप e-waste के लिए बात करते तो इसमें तो I think the best concept is EPR जो हम लोग क्रेडल टू ग्रेवल बोलते हैं. HCL जितना भी लैपटॉप बनाता है वो अपने क्रोमा के स्टोर में जाके वापस दो हमसे और देन फ्रॉम द क्रोमा दे विल कलेक्ट इट एंड दे विल ट्रीट इट इन अ इफेक्टिव वे. Because ultimately if we deal with the e-waste then ultimately we do not have that type of the strong treatment technology. So I think in that particular situation they are preparing, then they let them to take care of their waste. The e-waste is their baby, so ultimately they should take care. I think that concept will be the best because urban authority and industry cannot manage that particular waste very effectively because it contains the toxic material, heavy metals and all. That's why.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, madam.
Yes, Dr. Piyush Pathak.
Namaskar, madam.
Huh.
I am from Gwalior.
Okay.
Madam, how vertification will be beneficiary for the reduce the volume of the solid waste which will be come out from the urban area? Is it possible to reduce the volume, but it also create the air pollution after vertifications?
Yeah. So actually,
So, which rule will be identified to reduce this volume and how it will be significant for the reduce the increase the air pollution?
the very important thing is if you want to reduce the vertification. So I think now according in 2016 rule, it is mandatory to go for the biomining. I think you have heard about it. Indore was earlier number one because Indore has started the biomining. So vertical को उन्होंने vertical waste को उन्होंने horizontal कर दिया था. But ultimately Surat at that time has not started that. And because of that, Surat rank was not there.
I have already observed in Udaipur area near to railway station they are using this type of treatment plant, but I feel that they create many air pollution near to Udaipur area
So,
due to this vertification process.
so actually vertifications में illegal अगर fire होगा, illegal burning होगा, तो there will be air pollution problem. Ultimately, if you reduce the waste, जो vertical waste into the horizontal waste and in a particularly the biological way, biological activity, then we can do it. There are so many cities that they have started that and they are getting good results. Because biological activity, bacteria are not biased. है ना? Man is biased actually. So actually we are biased in such a way that if we are having a treatment which are very costly, then we will not implement it and then we blame it. But bacteria, if they are able to treat any type of the waste, they will go for that and they will treat it. So the best way is always to go for the biological test, biological treatment. So biomining, I think that will be the best option. It will take time. So actually आप ऐसे चाहते हैं कि within a 5 years you are able to convert the vertical waste stream into the horizontal, you can do it. But our mindset is I want it in 6 months, वो possible नहीं है sir. Because biological process are the slow process, natural process. तो फिर हमारा जो रैंक है वो सब भी कुछ भी हमें सोचना पड़ेगा इनके लिए बिकॉज बायोलॉजिकल प्रोसेस इट टेक्स टाइम, ऑलवेज इट टेक्स टाइम सर. तो इतना जल्दी नहीं होगा बट होगा सही.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I suppose we can conclude over here, madam.
Okay.
Thank you so much for all the knowledge sharing things that you have presented today. And once again, thank you for accepting the invitation and presenting at the very last moment, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you.